Thank you everyone for joining. My name is Cory. I'm going to be the presenter for our webinar today. This is webinar number 5. So thank you all for anyone who this is not your first webinar. Thanks for coming back. I hope you've been learning from this series, and anyone who is attending one of our webinars for the first time, our previous webinars are all posted on YouTube. If you go to our channel, you'll see all the previous webinars there. There's lots of good information, especially for anyone who's new to the Directline system. So today's webinar we're going to talk about checklists. And yeah, so we're going to talk about checklists. I've got Matt on the line again, as usual. He's going to monitor the chat. And so if you have any questions, we've got all the mics turned off just to keep from having a lot of background noise. So if you have any questions at any point, just post them in the chat. We've got opportunities for questions at various spots throughout the presentation, and Matt will bring those questions up when we get to those points. So feel free to plug all your questions into the chat. Yeah, so I'm expecting a runtime of about 45 minutes, I think, and we're going to cover a variety of subjects, all related to checklists. So let's get started. Today's subject, we're going to talk about. First, I'm going to give you a little bit of an intro on why checklists. So why are we using checklists, and why put our checklists in Directline? So we'll talk about some different ways you can do checklists, and some of the benefits of doing them as electronic checklists in Directline. Oh, hold on. I thought I was on the next page, but I'm not. There we go. All right. Yeah, that's better. So we're going to talk about action capabilities with Directline Mobile. So if you're using checklists in Directline, when you're using Directline Mobile, you get a little bit of a bonus with some actions that you can add to your checklists to just give you some more functionality. And I'm gonna explain those a little bit. I'll also explain some different task types that make your checklists a little more useful with mobile. We're going to talk about on-demand inspections, which is another way to create work orders with checklists attached, as opposed to just putting them on your preventive maintenance routines. We'll talk a little bit about checklist routes. So creating a route with multiple checklists when you're doing PM or doing inspections. And then I'm going to talk about checklist reporting, because the biggest benefit to putting checklists in Directline is being able to report on all the data that goes into those checklists. So those are our subjects today. As we move through each one, like I said, we'll take questions. We'll take questions at the end of each segment. All right. So here's the question is, why checklists? This is our first question. It's the first thing I thought about when I started putting this webinar together. And I found this nice quote. It comes from a gentleman whose name I'm not good at pronouncing, so I'm not going to try, but he wrote a book called The Checklist Manifesto. I read this book a couple of times. It's very, very helpful. A lot of great information about how to create effective checklists. So I highly recommend that book if you're putting together PMs and checklist routines. And this quote is, "We can have the most highly skilled, highly trained, hardworking people, but the volume and complexity of what we know can exceed our ability to deliver its benefits correctly, safely, and reliably. And the solution to that problem is checklists." And that quote just it really stood out to me, because that's why we're putting checklists in, because we know how to rebuild a pump or install a new motor, or whatever the process is that we're doing, we can know how to do that process, but just knowing it doesn't mean you're going to remember every step. Just knowing it doesn't mean you're going to remember all of your pre-flight checks or your pre-startup checks. So we're creating an instruction list or a list of safety checks, and putting a physical reminder to it. So you can look at that. You can look at that paper on your clipboard, or look at that screen on your mobile device, and you can go through the checks. Yes, I did this. Yes, I did that. And these are all of the points I have to check on this pump to make sure that it's going to continue to function. So that's why we're using checklists. We're using it as a reminder of what needs to be done to make sure that we're following every step, even though we've done the same job 100 times and we know what all those steps are. We're making sure that we're recording each one. And the second question was, why checklists in Directline? So anyone who's done PM routines, who's set up PM routines, has very likely attached checklists to those routines. And you might have a folder on a desk that's filled with paper checklists, and you're handing them out when you're handing out printed work orders, or you might have a Word document, or like I've seen thousands of Excel documents that are set up to be checklists, where we print them out with our work orders, and we can put them on a clipboard, and we can go and mark all that, mark down all our checks. And that works good as a reminder to make sure we're doing everything. That works great. But once that's filled out, where does it go? It goes in a folder that goes in a banker's box that sits in a closet for 10 years until somebody throws it away, or maybe it gets stacked up on a desk somewhere, or it gets stuck in a filing cabinet. But it's not really reportable. It doesn't really give you any benefit aside from reminding you what you need to check. When you enter your checklists into Directline, what you end up with is, every time that checklist gets completed, it gives you reportable data. So you can, and that's the last thing we're going to talk about today, is where to run these reports. But you can report on every time a task on the checklist failed, or every time something was marked outside of tolerance, or every time there was a deficiency. You can see all that information if it's all getting filled out in the Directline checklists. They're easily updated. So you can go into your electronic checklists in Directline, and you can change the tasks, you can change the task order, you can add additional tasks, and all you've got to do is add them in on the checklist entry, and then every PM that checklist is attached to is going to be updated with that new information. It's paperless, so we're not printing them out. We can. The ability is there. You can create your checklists in Directline, and you can print them out, but you don't have to. They're attached to your work orders, and you fill them out right on the work order, whether you're filling them out from the desktop system or from mobile. And that goes to the next point. They can be filled at site with Directline Mobile. So you can be at your machine. You can be at a press, going through your whole PM routine and checking it off right on your mobile device as you go. And if you're doing that from Directline Mobile, you have additional actions that add functionality to the checklists. So not only are you marking, yes, I did that, or that passed, or it failed, the next point that we're going to talk about is actions. So when we mark that as failed, we can actually have actions happen. Okay? So action capabilities. Keep in mind, these actions only work if you're filling out your checklists in the Directline mobile system. Okay, so we're gonna talk about them, but we're gonna talk about this, and just want you to keep in mind it's set up in the desktop, but you only get these benefits if you're using Directline Mobile, because it only works with the mobile system. So what are the actions? So with our actions, we can have the system automatically create follow-up work orders for a deficiency. So when we mark something as a failure, when we say that the vibration analysis on that motor was outside of tolerance, we mark it as a fail. When we complete that checklist, the system can automatically create a work order to replace that motor. Okay, or it can, and you can do that on with a yes no, with a pass fail, or option list task types, and I'll show you a few of those and how they work. Another action that can be added is involved parties can be notified of conditions. So what happens there is you can have it automatically send an email when the checklist is completed. So if you find 1 or 5 deficiencies when you're filling out your checklist, if they're marked to notify someone, send an email to a supervisor or send an email to a maintenance manager or whatever, to letting them know these things failed on that checklist, then we can do that. Maybe you want to have maybe you're doing a fire system inspection, and you want to notify your safety team that there were deficiencies. It can automatically do that. The last one is an alert can be displayed on the screen when the checklist is completed. So let's say you have a something that if it's marked as a failure, it's a critical failure, and the machine needs to be locked out. Well, you can have it so that when that gets marked fail and we close that checklist, it says be sure to lock out the machine and take it out of service. So without having to just put a note on a page somewhere, we can notify that maintenance technician that they need to do something, and we can do it dynamically with that message coming up. I'll take a minute and I'll show you how to set some of those up. So when we're creating a checklist, and if you've created checklists in the past, we create checklists by adding tasks to our checklist. And I'll go into a system and I'll show you one of these in a minute. But when we do this, we're just adding tasks. So as we're adding tasks, we are able to, right here, we're able to add an action to take. So in our screenshot right here, we're creating a follow-up work order. We have it set to color it red when the follow-up work order, or when that fail is marked. So it gives you 2 indications. It says create follow-up work order. It highlights it in red, and it'll ask for a deficiency description. And that deficiency description is going to show up on the follow-up work order that gets created. When we click on actions to take, it gives us this window where we can say create a follow-up work order. Or what I did with this one is I said create a follow-up work order, but I also wanted to send an email. So a follow-up work order gets created, and I'm sent an email letting me know that there was a failure there, and that lets me know that there's a deficiency in that section. And on that email and on that follow-up work order, it tells me which task was marked as a fail. So here's what that looks like. First of all, in the system itself, when we're creating a checklist, and I'll bring up a checklist that's already, excuse me, a checklist, wrong one. I'll bring up a checklist that's already in the system. So here's an existing checklist. Okay. If I was adding a task to this checklist, I would hit add task. It lets me choose my task type, and I'm going to talk about task types in a moment as well. But it lets me choose them. So if I choose a yes, no, or a pass, fail, or a physical condition appearance option list, when I do that, I can add actions. And in this case, I'm doing a physical condition appearance option list, and I could add an action to take to each one of these selections. So if I'm marking it as poor, maybe I want to create a follow-up work order. But if it's fair, maybe I just want to send an email to let somebody know that the condition is deteriorating. All right, so that's how our how we set that up. And then the other part is once those work orders are created, well, so once we have that checklist and it's attached to a PM and that PM is scheduled, this is what it looks like. When I go to this is our Directline Mobile. I'm looking at my work and I've got a work order here. I'm going to just do this one right here. So here's a work order, a PM work order, right? And if I go to my checklist tab, I've got a checklist. And when I'm completing this checklist, so when I'm filling out this checklist, I'm saying replace the air inlet filters. Yes. I'm testing safety valves. This one's a fail. Okay, so it's a fail. So it highlighted it in red, just like we saw in the screenshot on our slide. And it highlights it in red, and it gives us this option down here at the bottom, or not this option, this field down here at the bottom that says deficiency description. It also tells me a follow-up work order will be created when the checklist is completed. So if I go to my deficiency description and I say, my safety valve is corroded, now I'm going to get a follow-up work order for that. Now I can mark everything else as a pass fail, or as a pass or fail. If I look at my deficiency list, this one failed. I could check this box to enter additional deficiencies if there was anything else that failed. And then when I mark this as completed, I say, yes, it's completed, and I hit save. It tells me the checklist has been updated, and it created the follow-up work order. And this is what that follow-up work order looks like. So it says it's a follow-up to deficiency work order, or follow-up deficiency work order generated from work order 25872, this checklist right here. And here's the description of what failed and the deficiency description that I put in. So we've created that follow-up work order just like that immediately, just by completing that checklist. So that happens right away, and it gives it saves from having to have someone remember that fail requires a follow-up work order. It makes it so that when auditors look at your checklist and they say, oh, look, there was a fail there, what happened? You can say, it created this follow-up work order for me. We've done that repair. Or we have that repair scheduled on this follow-up work order. So it does all of that immediately and automatically for you. So that's our actions. The one other point that I want to make, because we're talking about tasks, is some additional task types. So when you're creating checklists, there is a default list of, I think it's 10 different task types in the system. The demo system that we were in, there was 60 or so task types in there for you from over the years of creating checklists and creating task types. So you have the ability to create your own task types. And here's just a few notable ones that I've seen that are available and that I've seen a lot of users make use of. The first one is equipment event readings. So when we're creating in our checklist, we can put a an event reading task type in it so that we can use that to take readings off the machine. So let's say we have a daily pre-run checklist for forklifts. We on that pre-run checklist for our forklifts, we could have an event reading section where we're recording hour readings off of the forklift. Then we can use those hour readings to trigger our PM. And we talked about triggering PM off of by intervals when we did our PM webinar. But we can also we also can cover that in training if anyone's interested in that. But the point today is just that we can actually take those readings take those readings with checklists, and this is actually the only way we can record those readings from mobile. So this is a very useful task to be able to add to checklists. Date and time. We can use that to add the date and time the checklist is completed, or just to put it to make sure that the technician is recording the date and time that they're doing they're completing this checklist. This is especially important when we get to checklist routes where we have multiple checklists on one work order, because you'll have a completion date on the work order, but you might want to know when each of the individual checklists was completed. And add nameplate data. So on our checklists, we can add to our checklist the nameplate data. So what this does is if I'm editing a checklist definition entry here, and I hit add nameplate data, it adds manufacturer, model, and serial number fields to the checklist. So those fields aren't things that need to be filled in when you're doing the checklist. What that does is when you're completing your checklist, or when you look at your checklist on mobile, it will have the manufacturer, model, and serial number of the equipment this checklist is for right there on your checklist. So this is a pump inspection. So it's going to show us the manufacturer, model, and serial number of the pump, which means you can be standing at that pump and you can confirm that the one you're looking at is the one you're supposed to be doing that checklist for. So that's just another handy detail to add to your checklists.
So Cory, we do have a question. It's not here.
Yeah.
Jason's wondering, for the checklist, can you add a photo or video to detail some of the more detailed tasks?
You cannot. So we don't have the ability to add photos or videos to checklists. And I don't believe we allow videos to be attached even to work orders. So videos are probably out. But for photos, one way you could do that is you can attach to, say, you're using these checklists on a preventive maintenance procedure. You could attach photos to the PM procedure, and then they would be also attached to any work orders that come from that procedure. So then your attachments on your work order would be your checklist and any additional photos that are required.
You can also, when you create the new work order, attach a document or a photo to any of the work order that you're doing.
Yes.
We also have another question about assigning the new work order from the mobile.
So I assume what you mean there is when we create the follow-up work order. So I probably can't bring that one up. easily. But when we create when the follow-up work order is created, what happens is one thing you can do is when the follow-up work order is created, you have the option, just like when you create a work order on mobile, where you can mark it, you can check the issue to self box. That'll issue it to you, and then it'll show up in your my work list. If you're not assigning the work order or issuing the work order to yourself, then it would go into, just like I have here on my work order console, we would find it here in our list as an unassigned work order. And then let's see if it actually ends up in there. Here it is right here. So it would show up right here as an unissued work order. So then I would from there, my planner could then assign it or issue it right from here, just like any other work order. So that deficiency work order becomes something that becomes a work order just like any other corrective maintenance work order. Do we have any other questions?
No, those are the two for now. And I just
Okay.
want to remind everybody too, what you're seeing is, anything you want to go into more detail as well. I mean, we can book any kind of training for yourself or anyone on your team to really go dive into these things as well.
That's right. What we're doing here, we're not the webinars aren't really designed to be a training session. What we're hoping to do is make you aware of some features that maybe you weren't aware of before. Let you know things that can be done and give you an idea of how to do them. But absolutely, our support and training, as always, is unlimited, and just reach out and we can get into detail one-on-one about anything that we talked about today.
That being said, I mean, keep the questions coming if something comes to you right now.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. All right. So our next section is going to be on-demand inspections. So this is a very nice feature in our system that probably most of you haven't heard of. and we don't have a lot of people using it right now, but I think that's going to change in the near future, because it is a very useful feature. So what on-demand inspections is, it makes inspection checklists available without a PM. So these would be for the times when you don't have a PM that comes out, you don't have a daily PM or a weekly PM, but you're doing an inspection, maybe your daily walkarounds. You don't want to create a PM procedure for it because you don't want to have to run your scheduler every day. Well, you could set up an on-demand inspection for your daily walkarounds, so that each day, and I'll show you how to do this, but each day you could go into your mobile and very quickly create an on-demand inspection when you're ready to start. This is another feature like the actions, where it is mobile specific, because really that's the only time you could do an on-demand kind of thing is if you've got the mobile way and you're right there. It allows, as we mentioned before, at-site data collection during your daily walkarounds. So these checklists that we're doing this with are just like any other checklist. So we could do at-site data collection, and we could also have actions to take on these checklists. So you might have a daily walkaround, or a daily, like I mentioned earlier, the forklift pre-run inspections could be set up as on-demand inspections, and they can record deficiencies and create follow-up work orders just like any other checklist. It is available, as I said, only on Directline Mobile, and it can be done for buildings or for equipment. So I think most people here would use it mostly for equipment, so that's where I'm going to focus, but I'll explain how to do both. So you could do it on buildings. So if you're doing an inspection of your building, maybe you're doing emergency lighting checks or fire escape checks or sprinkler systems, anything like that, that can be done on the building itself. And I'll show you how to set one of those up. The other one is equipment specific, where we could create the on-demand inspection work order and checklist for a specific equipment. We'll talk first about how to set these up. So this would be for our this screen here is when we're setting up a checklist. So we're in our checklist definition entry screen. And if you've set up checklists before, you've probably noticed that we have our tasks tab, which is the one we looked at earlier when we were adding our tasks. And then we have an equipment tab and an on-demand tab. So if we go to the on-demand tab, we could choose to do either equipment inspection or a building inspection. So this one here I have set as an equipment inspection. I've linked it to, I can link it to either equipment class, so I can use it on any equipment of any class, or sorry, any equipment of a certain class, or I can link it to a specific equipment ID. Okay, so I could say this is for just forklift number 1, or I could say it's for all forklifts, or using the example we have in our sheet here, this is a daily air compressor inspection. So I've got a link to equipment class, and when I go to the equipment tab on our checklist definition entry, I just set class to compressor. So now when I go to look at my go to my mobile and I want to do an on-demand inspection for a compressor, it's going to let me do it for any of my compressors. And we're going to go into mobile, and we're actually going to do that in a moment. When we're setting it up for a building, it works the same way, except rather than choose equipment inspection from our dropdown, we choose building inspection. Then we have the option to do it for all buildings, a specific building class, or specific buildings. And I set it up here just for service and maintenance building. So here's what that looks like. Again, this is another mobile only feature. You'll notice that as we go through that mobile and checklists really go together well. So we talk about them together a lot. Okay, because one of the best things about checklists is the fact that you can record the data. You can record the data live, and one of the best things about mobile is being able to record the data live. So they really do fit together very well. So here's how our on-demand inspections work. When I log into my mobile, right? So this is my mobile system. I log in the morning, and I'm going to go and do my compressor checks. So I'm going to go to my maintenance menu, and I'm going to go to equipment on-demand inspection because I'm doing it for a specific equipment. And I'm going to choose under equipment options here, I'm going to choose equipment class. I'm going to hit the drop down, and I know I want to do compressors because that's what I'm working on. So I'm going to choose air compressors. Then I can sort by the last inspection date. Last inspected, I can hit the drop down here and I can say just what's inspected more than 7 days ago, more than 30 days ago, or I can leave it on all and it's going to show me everything. Then I'm going to hit next, and here's all my available inspections. So I'll scroll down here, I'll find the one I want. So I'm going to do this rotary screw compressor right here. And then I'm going to hit done up top. And what that did, just by selecting that and hitting done, now I've created a work order. So I have a work order here with a checklist attached. I've got all my work order information on it. It's issued to me automatically. It says inspection generated from mobile is my work description. And now I have a work order that I can clock into. So I'm recording my time. and I can go to my checklist and I can start doing my compressor inspection. All right, so I very quickly created a work order, completed the checklist for it. I've clocked in. I can clock back. I'll clock back out when I'm done. And now I've got a record of having done my daily compressor check on this compressor. I have a checklist showing all of the things I checked, because when I look at this, I've checked vibration pads, I've tightened and retorqued bolts, I've checked belt tension. So if there are any failures of this at any point, I can, when I'm audited, I can go back to my checklist and I can say, yep, I tightened and retorqued my bolts. Here are the dates that I did all of that, because I've got a work order for it with reportable data in my checklists. And I'll show you how to get those when we talk about reports. The other one that I mentioned was building on-demand inspections. So we have equipment on-demand inspection and on-demand inspection. And the on-demand inspection was actually the first one we developed, and we developed it for doing inspections on buildings, walk-around inspections on buildings. So the way this one works is we go to our on-demand inspection, we can do a building inspection, we go to our building, and we choose the one we want to inspect. And then we hit next. And oh, I already did that one apparently. So I've got a work order open already on it. Let's see if I have another one. Okay, so I just hit skip on that, and let's see. Here we go. So here we have some building on demand inspections that we can do. I just select the one I want and I hit done, or I could hit select all and create them all. But I'll select just the one and I'll hit done. And again, that created my work order for me. It's got my checklist attached and ready to go. So it gets me very quickly a work order that I can record my time on, and a checklist that I can use to record everything I've done in an efficient and reportable way.
And we do have a question. I also just want to, I think could you go back there, Cory?
Sure.
Was this, Samuel was asking, this menu is only available for mobile version, and I wasn't sure if you meant this screen or when you're on the mobile. So if it's this screen, this is available on the desktop. This is where you would do it all. I would also like to point out to everybody, in a sense, on demand for the desktop, you can just add a checklist onto a work order in like the reference documents. Just as a heads up to if you kind of have it available there. So
yeah, so the setup of the on-demand inspection, that all does happen on desktop. If this is the menu, Samuel, that you're asking about, the on-demand inspection and the equipment on-demand inspections, yes, this is mobile. This is a mobile specific option, and it really is, because the only time you would really be doing that on demand is if you were walking into a building or walking up to your machine to do that. If it's something you're planning ahead, that you're going from the desktop version to do it, then you can, as Matt mentioned, you can create a work order, and on any work order in the reference documents tab, you can attach a checklist to it. So there are other ways that you can do it with desktop, but the on demand part is mobile specific. Are there any other questions? Okay, so let's move on to our next section. And our next section is checklist routes. Now, admittedly, I don't have a lot of experience with checklist routes. I don't have a lot of clients who use it, but I do have a couple of clients who do use it and use it fairly extensively. So what checklist routes are, it's creating a list or a list of checklists. That's terrible wording, but creating a list of checklists for multiple equipment to kind of organize the timing and the route, sometimes the physical route or the order that your preventive maintenance routines are going to be done. So you might do you might have a checklist route that takes you down a production line where you physically start at one end and move through the different machines. Or you might have a checklist route that takes you through things like inspection and cleaning operations and parts replacement activities in an organized order like that. Just getting your checklists to come out in the order you need them to come out to get through all of the jobs that need to be done efficiently. And here's how we set up checklist routes. And the checklist route entry screen, you've probably seen it if you've worked with checklists at all. You've seen checklist route entry screen, but you may not have used it. And the reason you may not have used it is because you have the option to attach on your PMs the checklists directly or through equipment routes. But if you want to use equipment routes, here's how we do it. So this is our checklist route entry screen. I created this checklist route. The number is a sequential counter. I put in my description. Here's what it is. I'm maintaining line number 2. My building is our food production plant. I could have selected to either go by equipment class. So maybe I want to do PMs on all of the forklifts, and I want to just do them in a certain order. Then I could select equipment class, and I could create it that way. In this case, I chose specific equipment because I wanted to take the specific equipment on production line 2, and I wanted to go through each one and complete a checklist for each one. So I selected from here all of my equipment, and we can't see it on here. So maybe I'll jump over to the system and I'll show you. So in the checklist route entry, if we look at checklist number 10022, here we can see each of my equipment. This is the order I want to do them in. I want to do all my spray cooler pumps. I want to do my case sealer and then my in-feed conveyor. And here are the checklists that are going to be completed for each one. Okay, so I've created this route. I've got my the equipment in the order I want, the checklists in the order I want, and now I'm going to attach this route rather than attaching a checklist to a PM. On my PM procedure, I'm going to down at the bottom, I can choose my checklist linking method, and I'm going to say link through equipment routes. Then when I go to my line scheduling details, rather than have a list of checklists, I have a list of checklist routes. So I have checklist route number 10022 attached to PM number 236. So here's what that's going to look like on a work order. So when a work order comes from that PM, it's going to look just like this one right here. Making sure I got the right one. I did. So here's the work order that came from that PM. So when I'm going to do this work, I can see these are all the equipment that I need to work on. And checklists right over here, it tells me I have 7. So when I hit my little checklist button, here's the 7 checklists that I have to do in order. I can, this same work order, I can see from mobile, and I can do my checklist from mobile as well. So when I go to my work, and I'll find that checklist or that work order here in my list. This is the same work order. When I go to it, I have my list of equipment, I have my 7 checklists, and they all show in order. So when I'm doing this from mobile, I go into my first checklist and I complete it. Once that checklist is complete, it's going to fold it up and it's going to show me the next one. So it's a long checklist, so I don't think I can go through the whole thing right now. But as I complete it, it folds it up into a completed checklists section, so that I don't. So I'll see this list of checklists that I need to do start to shrink. So that's what the checklist route does. Now I could take that same checklist route and I can attach it to multiple PM if I want to. If I have maybe I have twinned lines. I have lines 1 and 2 that are both the same. They both have the same equipment. Well, then maybe I'd attach my route to equipment class, and then I could attach the same route to a PM for line 1 and to a PM for line 2. So checklist routes, it's really just another way to attach checklists, and it's another way to attach checklists to your PMs, and it's a way to organize your checklists all into one spot. I'm sorry, I knocked my microphone over. It's a way to organize your checklists into the order that you need the work completed. This is again that same checklist that we saw when we looked at the desktop. Are there any questions about checklist routes?
No, it looks like we are good on that one.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about the last piece. And this is, in my opinion, the biggest benefit you get to doing checklists electronically in Directline, and that's reporting. Because every bit of information that you put into your checklists becomes reportable, right? This is now data that you can use to analyze the deficiencies with your machines, either on a specific machine level or on a broader scope. How many deficiencies do we have in total? You can use this to analyze your PM program. How many times are we getting a failure on that bearing? Should part of our PM be just replacing that bearing, right? How it gives you a lot more data than if you're just filling that out on a piece of paper. So what kind of reports do we have? We have analytics. We have an analytic graph in our system to track the number of deficiencies. So if all of your PM program is using checklists, you can track the number of deficiencies you have had. And you can track the number of deficiencies you're getting on your PMs, and that's going to give you an idea of the effectiveness of your PM program. The reporting module has some built-in reports. I'm going to show you a couple of those. And also, if you've ever if you've used our reporting module or the analysis module, you know that there's a report definition wizard that you can use to create your own reports. Well, you can create your own checklist reports as well. So if you need to see something that we don't have in the existing reports, you can create your own reports in the report definition wizard, pulling data from the checklist results master. And as always, if you need to create a report and you're not quite sure how to do it, or you can't remember that you need to take it from the checklist results master, our support line is 24/7. It's unlimited, and they are absolutely able to help you create any reports you need. But let's take a look at some of the reports that are actually in the system by default. So starting on our home screen, we have an analytic here for checklist deficiencies. We don't have a lot of deficiencies in our demo system right now, so I've shown it to you just to kind of give you an idea. I'm looking at the last 2 months here. We had 2 deficiencies in April, and we've had none so far in May. This can be exported to Excel, just like any of our other analytics. When I export it, it's giving me the last 12 months, and we've got deficiencies on each one. And we can go to our details tab, and we can view all the work orders that had those deficiencies. So as I said, all that data is in the system, and it is reportable. So that's our deficiencies. Like I said, we don't have a lot of deficiencies in our demo system, but that's not the most comprehensive reporting we have for checklists anyway. When we go to our reporting module, and if your system may not have a reporting module, you may have have the analysis module. It's going to be the same thing. The only real difference in our reporting module, we go under all modules and we see maintenance checklists, whereas in your analysis module, you should see it just on the main analysis menu. You should see a maintenance checklists option. If you don't have either of those, but you're planning to use checklists, or you're using checklists already and you want to report on them, call our support line. We'll make sure you've got the reports you need. So the reports that we have in here, under maintenance checklists, we have a deficiency report. Well, that's going to show us very similar to what we see in our analytics, except it gives it to us right away in an Excel format, and it allows us to add a little bit more filtering criteria to it. We have a checklist log report. So if we were to run a checklist log report, what this is going to show us is we would go in and we would put maybe a checklist ID. Maybe we put a checklist ID and an equipment. If we wanted to see all the results for maybe checklist 1054 for equipment P3. We've got to put in a start date and an end date. So I'm just going to look at a 3-month span here from February 1st to April 30th. And we're looking at all the results for checklist ID 10054 for P3. Taking longer than I had hoped. But what this is going to show us is all of the checklists that have been filled. Okay, so it gives us this PDF. Here is each checklist on a page for each time it was filled out. So if an auditor says, show me the results of your inspections for this pump. Okay, well, here we go. We have we've got every checklist that we ran. We have a 10-page report here with all of our checklists on it. So that's a nice report that we can run. Another one that gives you a little bit, in my opinion, a little bit better data is the checklist results. So if I'm looking at checklist results and I want to see maybe for the same time frame, maybe I want to see what I want to see for my same checklist, but I don't want to see all of the results. I just want to see every time we check the impeller tolerances. Maybe we had a failure on our impeller. Are we checking the tolerances? Have they failed recently? Well, let's find out. So we'll put in our checklist ID. We're putting in that we're checking impeller tolerances. We put the equipment that we're interested in, and then we hit export. And this one's going to go into Excel. And what this is going to show us is each time it was filled out, the data was filled out, what the task description was, and whether it passed or failed. So this gives us a quick look at all of the times that we did it in that 3-month span, and what the results were. This would become even more useful if for our impeller tolerances, if we were taking, rather than a pass fail, but if we were actually marking the measurements, then maybe we'd see a trend in the change in tolerances. And we have the ability with number fields or reading fields to put in that information into our checklists. So as I said, we have 4 built-in reports here that we can use. We have our deficiency report or our deficiency analytic here on our home screen, and the ability to use the report definition wizard to create any reports that you need. And you can create those yourself, or you can call our support line, and we can help you create those. Do we have any more questions about anything that we've talked about, or any checklist related questions at all?
I'm not seeing any more questions, so I think we're good on that level.
All right. Well, reporting was the last thing that I wanted to talk about. We managed to stay pretty close to our 1 hour with our agenda today, so that's pretty good. Thank you to everyone who's joined and everyone who's joined on all the past webinars. This one, just like the others, will be posted on YouTube, and everyone who joined, I'll send out a link to the recording that then you can pass on to anyone else who you think might find it useful, or if you want to review it. As always, our support line is 24/7. So if you have any questions about checklists, whether it's setting them up, using them, reporting on them, whatever it is, our support line is always there. They're always happy to help. And if you want to implement a checklist program, you can call our support line, and they will set you up with some one-on-one training with myself or one of the other trainers, and we'll help you get set up. There's more information about checklists you can find on our YouTube channel. Our handle is there, or even if you just search Megamation on YouTube, give us a follow, and you'll be notified anytime a new video is uploaded. So thank you all very much for joining. Thanks, Matt, for your help, and everyone have a great day, and we hope to see you at the next one in 3 months.